I shared in the chat one of the things that ChatGPT really struggles with. It's creating pictures. And the example I had was trying to understand how curling rinks work, curling sheets work. And the first picture it drew is nice. The second picture it drew is nonsense. So,
Right.
so
These are
take a
large,
look. It's kind of fun.
these are large language models, not large picture models.
But they
So
try to draw pictures. And in the language, it says, would you like me to draw a picture? And I say, yes. And it has never been good.
yeah, so that it's not. So one of the things that I've noticed about my students this semester, more so than in the past, that has struck me. Their first presentations were better in QR than I've ever had, but they have struggled with any kind of visual, producing any kind of visual display of quantitative information. Um, and we're moving into spreadsheets in a bigger way now. Be interesting to see how they do with those because that's not. So I think I have a group that is pretty good verbally and can express their thinking verbally better than most freshmen who are in a QR student in a QR class. So every class you get, you know, has sort of a personality. Have you been teaching for a while? I'm sure you've experienced this, and has certain strengths and certain areas where they struggle. And so I think I need to give them more support. Um, and maybe I don't know whether schooling has changed, that things are they've grown up in a different kind of schooling where they do less visual displays and less
Well,
pictures and less diagrams.
could you be getting students coming out of the state's QR courses and they do a lot more writing in that?
Right. I have not taken a poll yet to see how many of my students took a course like this in high school. So that might explain why some of them were on their first mini presentation, which is usually, doesn't go so well, but it's an opportunity to learn so that I have them present early and often. So by the time they're doing their final project at the end of the semester, they've had a chance to grow and get better at doing that. But their actual presentation skills were pretty good. Um, the they've got some work to do in some other areas that I've already identified, and one of them is it's like the problem solving strategy that's recommended for this is to draw a diagram or a picture, and they don't do it at all.
What?
So instead of being like AI doing something that's no good, they and they can't think of, well, what kind of picture would I draw? So it's interesting.
Greg, is it when you say they don't do anything at all, do you mean um, for the assignment or for in-class work or
I'll
what?
give you an example. I'll give you an
Thanks.
example. So one group was assigned to present a problem involving a bookworm. So a bookworm, you have three volumes, a book of three volumes on a shelf, and
Right.
it's crawling from page one of the first volume to the last page of the last volume.
Correct.
They never thought of actually putting books on a shelf or drawing a picture of books on a shelf or anything like that.
Well,
And they got
keep
the answer wrong.
in my mind, I immediately put that picture, but I always thought of that as an engineer's approach to problem solving. You know, the town hall square the tiling of the town hall square problem, that your example of the bookworm. Immediately, when I was with engineers, there was a picture on a piece of paper. So I always do it mentally. I just wonder if that's an approach that we haven't taught students yet, as opposed to making them, in other words, make them the creators versus so they can start interpreting problems.
Right. In a lot
I,
of textbooks, when a picture is thought to be useful, the author will provide a picture on the page instead of here, there is no picture. And but it says for the following problems, you know, consider drawing a figure, a picture, or diagram, and they just don't do it.
Janet,
Yes,
as the resident engineer,
thank you.
going back to the very beginning of my career, we had a class in sketching, and we learned
Seriously.
seriously, and we learned about how to draw sketches of whatever it was we were analyzing. Very important in statics, very important in what was the other example I had in my mind? But the point was, in thermodynamics, learning to draw the control volume. There's been so many mistakes in even in current science, things that have been uh, as accepted as science, but the people who are doing the work didn't realize that the control volume was much bigger, and they didn't draw it properly. And so, yes, learning to draw do the sketching of the problem you're trying to solve to make sure you've got it, including all the appropriate inputs and outputs, makes a huge difference to how well you do. So what you saw is how engineers think, how we're taught to think, Janet. It's very helpful. The second thing I would say, while I have the floor, and I was thinking about it as Todd was presenting, it's a something that I've run into. I'm resistant to AI. My son is all over me that I should be using AI for everything I do. I've lived on the cutting edge of technology, as most of you know, or some of you know, I've lived on the cutting edge of technology all my career, working for GE Aviation. I now am still doing things in my late retirement that are cutting edge. And I I want to write up about it. I want to create it in my own words with my own sketches, my own equations, and to feed it into the machine and to let it make it better seems to me to take away the joy of creation, and that I'm now creating pabulum rather than what I did myself. Because I take a pride, I as an individual take pride in being able to create. So I'd be interested in how people see that, because you're on the other side of this where, yes, people can go and pull good things from the web. That's reactive. That's not creative. But there is a place for it. That's what is interesting to me these days, trying to look at this interface about between creativity and reaction. Not dead silence, please.
But I think Greg has brought up that problem that AI is not creative. It only reports data that it has, that it owns, that is out there. Are you afraid of losing control of that data, or are you see as someone who absolutely hates writing, I would rather sit down and take an advanced calculus test rather than write something in words. But so I look at this as joy. But I totally get what you're saying about the creative versus reactive. And I think Greg has been saying that AI is just reactive. It doesn't produce the next idea. It just tells you what has happened.
Yeah, but then there are folks that'll, quote Einstein fairly late in his career. He said in his entire career he'd only had two original ideas. So, how many of us are coming up with brand new stuff unavailable to AI? I don't know. There are so many things that I don't know. I'm sharing, Kim's concerns about a variety of things here. I'm looking at the workforce needs and how those are evolving with respect to AI. And there's, in some respects, no conceivable thing that a human could do that we can't get the AI and the technology and stuff to replace and stuff. So what do we need the human for here? The wetware, aka the humans, is much harder to build than it is the technology side of a solution to a problem now. And as educators, looking at all this, we can see possibilities and we can get it creative and stuff, but the average student and stuff that we're dealing with, are they going to become better educated, better thinkers, better learners as a consequence of this innovation, or are they going to become lazier and more dependent on it? As I don't know. I sent Kim a little video clip. I won't bother all of you with it from the James Bond film Skyfall when the one gentleman comes out and lays a knife on the table and because they're going to have to kill a bunch of folks. He says sometimes the old ways are the best. So anyway.
So, I'm listening to this whole discussion and I'm thinking about in my career, when I started teaching in 1983, what was available? Just a very simple calculator. Then we got the graphing calculator. Then in the 90s, I was one of 3 people at Terra that taught online, and people thought I was crazy for doing that. And I remember my mother, who was 96 at the time, saying to me, "Do you think distance education will replace the traditional classroom?" And I made the statement to her that I didn't think that would ever happen because students appreciate the human interaction. And when I chaired the distance learning committee for AMATIC, we had, first of all, had a task force that I also chaired, and we came up with a statement that said distance education is not for every student and it's not for every teacher. And when we look at the whole AI thing, I think just listening to what everybody says, it's kind of the same thing. It's not for every person. We all have different ideas. I'm thinking about what Walden is doing right now, where they are forcing students to use AI in different assignments. And they are forcing students not to use AI on certain assignments. So they are seeing the value of its use, but also the value of not using it. And I think that's what we have to think about. We have to think about when we started with graphing calculators, we had to ask different questions.
Yes,
So we
I
have
agree.
to change our teaching in order to accommodate students who are using AI. And I had no idea about Notebook LM. I'd never heard of that until today. And I like to think I'm, on top of things. Well, evidently I'm way not on top of things. So that's another tool. I love technology. I think technology is amazing, but we need to remember it has its place. It shouldn't replace us, and it shouldn't replace thinking.
Well said, Nancy. And I, on top of the 47 fears that I already have about this stuff, I reflect back on some of the highest quality learning experiences that I witnessed in, many decades of being in the classroom and stuff. And some of the absolute best was when it was student peers working with their peers and communicating back and forth and stuff and coming up with an environment to make that a expectation and something that students engaged in regularly and stuff. And seeing how that extended outside of the classroom and stuff was some of the most productive things I could do with groups of students in terms of enhancing their learning and stuff. And I just hope that with all the potential and stuff that you see here, that is doesn't fall by the wayside. Where when I want to engage in an interaction with stuff, I go to uh, Chat GPT to do it, as opposed to talking with my peers and working with them. And even though my peer may not be substantially greater expert than I on stuff, between the two of us, as we work back and forth with things, our understanding and ideas and develop in a what is for me anyway a much more rich way, I guess, than sometimes when I'm sitting down and getting instant gratification from AI. So, yes, I'm curmudgeon-y. Sorry.
Well, this is a very nice conversation of what could be, but I think Nancy hit it on the head here. That is not what goes on in our math classrooms. We have a very procedural approach. We show students how to perform procedures, we practice them, and we prompt them to use the procedures, and that's how we assess them. We need to change our math classrooms drastically over towards reasoning, explaining, talking, describing. You need to be able to be in a conversation with me about something. We need AI is forcing us to change our classrooms, and if nothing else, that is good.
Well, technology has been doing that for a long time. I mean,
With very resistant faculty.
Amen,
well,
Lee.
um, people are always going to resist what's new. It just you just have to keep at them, and eventually, um, change happens. I mean, Brad, at OSU, are there still calculus classes that don't use the calculator?
I haven't checked lately, but I think that's still the policy.
Not just some don't use calculators, but calculators are forbidden as department policy.
Well, that was as of a couple of years ago. As I said, I haven't been paying attention to the calculus sequence this year, but they are piloting a few things. I don't fully know how they're different.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And as some of you know, at least, not only were there demand and weights, but there was also Bill Davis, who Lee worked with, who was using computer algebra and was one of the national leaders in computer algebra
And we had
at the
graduate
Ohio State
students
University.
teaching our courses because faculty wouldn't do it.
Say that again, Lee.
We had graduate students teaching in our mathematics lab, or calculus lab, because faculty wouldn't do it.
Yeah. And the thing is, I had a student about, I guess it's been 12 or 15 years ago, did a national survey of PhD granting institutions. And there was a wide variety of opinions about the use of technology. Um, Many faculty in the survey said they allowed it or encouraged it in advanced undergraduate courses and graduate courses. If you're going to take numerical methods, they wouldn't just explain the methods that computers could use, but they would actually employ them on a computer and use them, and crazy things like that. But the majority opinion still was that at the beginning level, meaning like for students in freshman and sophomore year at the university who've already been studying mathematics for 12 or 13 years, that at that beginning level, it could still be harmful, despite much research to the contrary. But the research is not valued by mathematicians because it's not proofs of theorems. It's something from some other domain of knowledge where the research is done. So
True.
that doesn't matter. Only professional opinion of mathematicians matters.
Hmm. I mean, that's a different reason why a lot of school math, teachers are opposed to some of the technology and the new methods. A lot of their um, pushback comes from, well, I didn't learn that way and it worked for me.
Mhm.
And because I was able to learn all of this without talking about it, without the technology, these kids should be able to do that too. And so there's a lot, I got a lot of pushback because of that.
You dig deeper with university mathematicians, you'll hear many of those same things also.
You're right, Kim. Explaining a concept and doing the symbol manipulation often showed different stories. They could do it.
Yeah.
Explaining it was a little bit more difficult.
Mhm.
It is
Well,
my contention that the purpose of college, at least, is not to learn facts. There's too many of them. I don't care how long you spend in math. I spent years in math, and I feel like I didn't get anywhere because there's always more. That's not what we want to teach. We want to teach people how to think. Our classrooms, lower level at least, don't do that. We need to get over to that.
I agree, and I think a lot of the courses in the that ODEW is pushing are helping that. The quantitative analysis, those are pushing the thinking more than the accumulation of facts.
When I
And
was teaching at Mason, I used to ask my fellow the people in the math department, why do we teach this? Why do we teach the quadratic equation? Why do we teach, the different rules and procedures in mathematics? And most of them had no answer. They just said, this is the way the curriculum is built.
Sure.
And I said, well, where are we going in the future with this? If these students are going to leave school when they graduate, what have we done for them? And that question usually left them with no response. It saddened me tremendously. I said, well, why are you teaching algebra? Then why are we teaching geometry? What is the point here for their total development of thinking? And it was a question that stuck around for a while. And what I was so hoping for them to realize is how algebra takes things apart and geometry puts them together. And going back to Kim's bigger picture of what we want to do with mathematics. And to me, it's just such a lifetime philosophy. Anyway, we don't teach our pre-service teachers to look at this bigger picture.
I agree
Thank
with
you.
you, Janet. I was just going to say you sound just like my father. He was a chemical engineer, and dad math at the kitchen table produced tears on both sides of the table. But I would remember saying to him in trigonometry, I'd be like, but why? Why is this happening? Why are we doing this? And he's like, this is all about learning how to think. There's different ways of thinking, and everything you just said, taking apart, putting together, and stuff like that. But thank you. Today's his birthday, so thank you.
Your father's ideas live.
That's right. Thank you.
And we are fighting even more technology because the only way to help people think is to talk to them, to hear what they have to say, respond to it, have them respond. Like that's the only way. And we are now taking that out of the homework. I now have online homework systems which will say yes or no to every number you put in and never ask you why you did it.
Mm.
Well,
Go ahead.
there's a place where I wonder where some very small LLMs uh, could help. Respond to the 1 to 5 sentence response that students give. There'd be a way to train those appropriately. It is funny to think back on how with the new technology, how the curriculum has changed somewhat, but in other ways hasn't changed at all. I mean, I remember my first year teaching, my first parent conferences, and a parent asked me, Why are you teaching your students how to use trig tables? They can just press the button on the calculator. And I didn't have a good reason, right? Because, that's just what the course coordinator decided we were going to do. That eventually went away at that school, and it's hardly taught anymore, near as I can tell, which is a loss for understanding interpolation. Never mind that. But we still insist that students rationalize denominators in most of our, algebra classes.
True.
Even though that should have gone away as soon as we had calculators available. Most people don't realize that it's so you don't have to divide by root 2 with long division.
But it's fun.
No, it's not.
Math is fun. Arithmetic,
I found it really interesting that Todd is so obviously an articulate advocate of AI. And yet at the same time, he warned us about these big systems and the pitfalls. And I just kept thinking, this is so complicated. It's so much more complicated than deciding whether I'm going to use a graphing calculator. It's really a societal issue in a way that some of our historic questions have not been a societal issue. And I'm pleased to be with such smart people talking about it.
Going back to what Bill was saying about being the engineer, my husband too is an electrical engineer, and he has been using AI. Okay, he's retired, but he uses it for the weirdest things. For he doesn't write papers, he doesn't work in the public sector as Bill still does, but he continually he's exhausted the classes in foreign languages at the Virginia Wesleyan University. Now he's moved over to Old Dominion, which has horrible parking as OSU. He uses the AI for pictures. He has them animate pictures. He uses it to generate messages. He does what I would think is making his life more efficient. The idea of the privacy thing has never bothered him because he said not enough people are using it. So it's very interesting how different people view all this.